Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the metaphysical. Join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey everyone. Everybody, this is going to be a great show tonight. We're talking with Dana Louise. She's a wife of 32 years, a mother of 2, and she's also a contactee. When she was an infant, she was visited by Greys, and her entire supernatural paranormal world began to drop by. So without further ado, Dana, how are you?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me here. I'm really honored. This is a pleasure.
And Jim, how are you tonight?
Good, not bad. Yep.
Hearing anything from the government lately?
Not lately, except for the normal mainstream propaganda.
Right. Yeah, I just seen some clip about Joe Rogan. He was going over this clip that somebody had with a UFO. They were in some kind of small airplane, and then this UAP went flying past. And I wish I tried finding the original clip.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that was a major airliner. A person on a major airliner was photographing out the window, and a cylindrical craft went by like it freaking Mach 10 or something. And there's a pretty good still of it, interestingly, that isn't real. Contrary to a lot of, UFO pictures, I think because of the field propulsion, which always makes it kind of blurry, this is a little bit sharp, you can tell, you can see it kind of clearly, this sort of cylindrical object that just shoots right by, that has no, normal sort of signs of conventional propulsion, contrail or anything like that. It's definitely not like a conventional aircraft. So it was interesting.
Yeah. Next time I'll be more prepared to find these clips to put on here so everyone can see them. So Dana, tell us a little bit about yourself.
As you said, I'm, I'm a normal person as much as normal can be. I'm a suburban housewife. That's the disguise I've tried to have up until recently, because the minute you start to talk about these things, all your credibility just falls out of your mouth. So I've just kind of stayed hidden. But like you mentioned, when I was an infant, still in the crib, I began to be visited by the Greys. They continued to do this for many years until I was probably 8-10 years old. And then other aliens have showed up. And then, people try to separate the paranormal from the supernatural, but the supernatural has also showed up in my life, such as ghosts, angels, a crystal skull in deep, deep space, a shadow hat man. It's just a bunch of crazy things. And if I were to listen to myself, I wouldn't believe it either. And I don't believe in many things. I try to be discerning, and the thing of it is I don't believe in things. It's because I know things because I've experienced things. And it's still a hard time for me to grasp all that. A lot of it I tried to suppress. And I've wrote a book. And as I was writing the book, a lot of things, that just kind of shook the jar up. And, so a lot of memories are coming back now, which is interesting. So that's just kind of how I am.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we go to the first experience and totally unpack that? Like I said, give us like the highest resolution detail you can, starting from begin to end.
Right.
Everything of that first encounter.
Right. So, I was born in 1962. And so it's a long time ago. And back then we used to have these shades. Today people have more like window blinds, but back in the day we had like these roller shades of some sort of polymer or something or another. I don't know. And they were run like on a magnetic clutch or something. And you would roll them up and down. And the only reason why it's important is because that's the beginning of the whole scenario. So I'm asleep laying in bed. So I'm offline, you could say. And I wake up to the sound of this shade rolling up and snapping. It startles you. So I just remember the startle. I'm an infant. I'm in my crib. And I remember all these things because I'm literally kind of going through a checklist with my body and my surroundings. So for me, as I recall it, the shade goes up, and that's unusual. It's loud, and there's a part of my memory that's like somebody should be coming into the room, or is somebody already in my room? My sister was 7 years older. My brother was 14. Is somebody 14 years older? Is somebody playing a joke on me? All these questions. But in the moment, what I'm experiencing, it's black. The shade rolls up. It's hard to see, but I can see this form. It looks like a balloon. So immediately all I'm seeing is a balloon.
So that's like what your child mind sort of interpreted it as, because
right.
It was the shape, I guess.
Right. And I'm an infant, and I'm literally at that point, I can't really tell you. I mean, as I got older, I could say it's a balloon. In that moment, I'm just seeing something, okay? Because I'm an infant, if that makes any sense. I'm an infant, so how many experiences have I had with a balloon, right?
Right. I mean, at this point, was there even conceptual thought, or like, were you speaking at this point? Because that would.
I don't really think so, because I know I still had I had a diaper. I don't believe I could stand. Might have been about that time, but just.
So
just,
then you.
yeah.
Right.
So I'm seeing this form in the window. It's dark. At the same time in the room, I'm like, because there's this bright white light that's tracking around the walls, and it's going around, just kind of in a strange formation, searching.
A very bright light, like a powerful bright light, or
unusually weird. I've never seen a light as bright, and it's almost like blue. It's like, it's just a strange light. I don't think I've ever really seen anything that bright or shocking or something. It doesn't brighten the room.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
It doesn't brighten the room. It's just like a spotlighty kind of thing. And I'm hearing a hum. I'm feeling a bright vibration. But I saw the shape in the window because the shade went up and my eyes were drawn to it. Now, so a lot of these memories also, the cognition of it became more fulfilled, I would say, as I grew older, because when I was older, now this happened a lot. Okay. But this is the first experience I'm now I can put more words to it. But at the time, here's this form in the window. And there's a part of me that knows like that's not right, because the window, even though it's on a first story level, my dad, who was like 6'2", would have to get on a ladder to actually peer in. And at that level, he'd have to be up a couple steps. you know?
And so you felt surprised by that, even as young as you were, that someone was in
Right.
the window, right?
Right. I think as a child, I was just kind of like, is that a toy or something? Like I don't think I really understood what it was. And I'm going to tell you, all these, I see all these depictions of grays and all these kinds of things, and they're very spectacular, but they're not what I saw. What I saw was more, you could almost say bland. It wasn't this detailed, everybody's like having these grays in their mouths and, and they've got bone structure and everything like that. No. It literally looks more like a dark gray balloon with this lips. And in my book, I described them as a female personal part. If you get my drift, the lips were kind of like, I don't think there was any teeth.
That's not the normal slit mouth of a gray. Then normally grays have just a very sort of tiny slit,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just a tiny slit, like a female body part.
Okay, right.
Yeah, just a slit.
What about were the eyes discernible at that?
Oh, yeah, huge. Yeah, I could see the eyes, and it's looking at me. I'm looking at it, and I'm frightened in the fact of that it's there. I'm frightened in that I don't know what any of these kinds of things.
What was the level of fear? Like trauma, terror, or just like?
Yeah, I mean, but not. I don't understand why. I mean, there could have been the possibility of endless possibilities of what's going to happen to me. And I'm in shock and a bit of trauma, but I'm going to say there was almost like there wasn't any fear for my life, because I don't think that I had the conception that they could possibly take my life, because that's not a thought. Death isn't a thought. You know what I mean? You have to be older to understand what death is. So I'm just seeing this thing and I don't know what it is. And it's unusual, even as an infant. Let's just say I'm maybe 6 to 9 months old or something like that. So I've been around a little bit, and there was a lot of me that questioned, like, why did I come online? Why do I have this memory? And I think it was what's the word? I can't think of it. Moment, a shock moment. And so most children have a bucolic life. There's like nothing that's most children threatening them. And this was a threat on a certain level. And so the thing is, I'm seeing this shape and I literally am looking at it. I'm fascinated with it, but I'm also seeing these lights in the room, hearing the humming, feeling the vibration. And then at a certain point, I'm hearing like, it almost sounds like paper. This something like, like in the room, like bodies bumping about or something's bumping about. And the next thing I know, now these faces are coming over the crib, and there's a number of them.
There's multiple of them at that point.
Yeah.
More than
and
two?
Then, oh yeah. I mean, I'm by the time I passed out, I would guarantee you there had to be like 3 or 4 coming over the crib. I can't tell you how many were in the room. I'm in the crib. And then I black out. Now I'm going to tell you, I don't recall after that time ever seeing the light going around in the room again, but I do always remember, well, I can't say that either. I do remember the humming happening and the vibrations happening a number of times. As I got older and I could walk, I remember giving them a tour of the house. And yeah, so, but the thing is, I just want to kind of go fast forward almost to today. I was on Facebook, and this had to be about 7 years ago, something like that. The neighbor girl behind us, she was like, people you may know. And I reached out to her. We got together, make a long story short, we're talking. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, because she's just so normal. She's a normie. She's a muggle. And I started to talk about the aliens. And there's a part of me that was going, no, don't say anything to her, because she's going to think you're nuts. You're never going to see her again. All these kinds of things. And I don't normally talk about this. I didn't understand why I was blurting it out to her, and I'm kind of hyper and, like, oh my God. And I'm telling her, and she calms me down. She puts her hand on top of my hand and she goes, Dana. I'm like, what? And she stops me. I'm like, and she goes, I remember the vibrations and the sound. And I'm like, you do? And she goes, yeah, I remember that. And she goes, and I laid there in her crib. We're about the same age. She goes, I remember laying in my crib. So that confirms that I was in my crib. She said, I remember that. And I was petrified. Now.
And she also said that I thought you said this in Bases 140, that she remembered hearing that a lot.
Yes.
That sound and vibration.
Right. Because they visited us a lot. We don't think that they visited her house. We think that they were coming to my house. And as I was older, like 4 or 5 years older, old, I remember having certain, strange physiological attributes, like I could mess around with electronics, things such as that. And
when did you first, do you remember when you first noticed that? Was it after the first experience that would be psychokinesis, right? Or telekinesis, that type of what you're describing ability?
Sure. But no, not as a baby or anything like that. You're not exploring those kinds of things. I'm just a baby, so I'm more 4 or 5 years old, and you're exploring the world and doing things. And I remember, this, kind of happening. And it was almost synchronicity because everything was analog. And, then my dad got a digital clock and all this kind of stuff. And I was able to like make it all go 888 or, there was a lot of things. And I'm going to tell you, to be fair, I know that I don't remember all of the attributes that I had. But what I can tell you is that many times I didn't recall being visited, but I would have the attributes. And then I would go, oh, that's right. I must have been visited, because the only way I would have these attributes is if I had been visited the night before. There was such a
strong correlation between the two things that you could imply from the one.
Right.
That an experience or encounter had happened.
The other thing was, I always kind of enjoyed that because it made me special. Because, as I said, my sister was 7 years older. My brother's 14 years older. So he's off doing his own thing. He's like a grown up, And, my sister, she was, 7 years older. So she's bigger than me. She could sit on me. And like, as I have said, she would tickle my feet or whatever. And, so there was no way for me to do anything to her, but I would have these magical attributes, and that bugged her because she didn't have them. And I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm special. Like, I'm not special. I can't sit on you and tickle your feet, but I can look at what I can do, kind of like a Harry Potter thing or something like that. And I remember that happening. And she, at the beginning, she was kind of like, well, that's just your shoes, the shoes back in the 60s and 70s, that's just static electricity. And I'm like, oh, really? So I would give off a spark, like I would get rid of it. If I had any static electricity, I would make sure I didn't. And I'd be like, okay, and see, now watch this. And I would do whatever it was, messing with certain electronics. Back in the day, go ahead.
So she would witness other people around you would see these things too.
Oh yeah.
Devices.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a kick out of it. And I think there's some of that's with me, to this day. But most of the attributes, there was a lot. And I just remember, it would take a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, maybe 4. And it would just go, less. And I would be kind of bummed out, like, oh, no, I can't do everything. Like, bummer. I kind of thought it was cool.
Yeah. Any idea?
Hold on, Jim, 1 second.
Go ahead. Yep.
Let me recap this just real quick. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you was an infant, mm-hmm. and you had seen, what you interpret as grays.
Right.
Now, as you got older, you start to put this together, mm-hmm. and you're like, wow, I definitely seen something. I can remember that. Mm-hmm. And then you started to realize that you could mess with electronics.
Right.
And then with the electronics, you started to show people that you could actually do this. Now, was this like you're standing back and you can make, for example, like your clock, you could shut it off or move the numbers, and you're not even, touching.
I'm not touching it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to recap.
It was, a lot of it was just through intention. And I didn't really necessarily have to wave my hand. I think when the power was a little less, there was a lot of that kind of was a continuing thing. A lot of the electronics was always kind of with me, but there was always, after I was visited, more. I'll tell you, there back in the day, they had these things that were like a speaker. They were about the size of a small speaker, but they had kind of like this frosted webbing, kind of like what you would do in like a fluorescent light, that screen, so you don't see the light bulbs. It was kind of like that plastic front, and they would have like these spectrums of colored lights, and they would go doo doo doo, and they, would be colored lights or something, and you would have that while you had music going or something. And I could, with my thoughts, change the lights and make it do stuff. They don't have them anymore, but that was one thing. We didn't have it, but a friend of my dad's had it. There's just strange things that I wouldn't know that I could do it, but then all of a sudden something would happen and be like, oh, I can mess with that. Like, that's pretty cool. I'd walk around the world going, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. But like I said, the huge things that I could do would diminish, and I didn't always remember. And, but I would be reminded because I have these attributes, because I didn't know I was visited, but I'd have the attributes. So I go, oh, I was visited. But then as time would go on, here's the strange part, I would forget about the whole thing. I'd forget about everything. And then, like say in about a month, I was like, oh, that was just out of my mind. And then the attributes or the memory would happen and be like, oh, that's right. And I remember, and I wrote this in my book, especially when I was little, like let's say 1, like now it's happening a number of times. And I would say, oh, they're back. Because it was like, I forgot. Oh, they're back. So I almost felt like there was, for lack of a better term, a spell, like to forget. And I remember probably about first, second grade, there was a voice that was telling me, you have to remember this. Try to hang on to this. Try to remember these things. And I was like, there was a part of me that's like, why? And it's like, well, it's important. So there was like this voice trying to tell me it was important to remember these things. But there was also almost like a physiological thing of like, I would be forgetting, so there was this struggle.
Now, do you think that as to why the visits would cause this momentary sort of fleeting enhancement of the telekinesis, psychokinesis abilities, do you think, do you have any ideas? I just wonder about, how some people are around when they give birth to a child, some people who are psychic, go through a massive elevation of their psychic abilities. Is there something with emotional energy, that plays into this? You know how, like for instance, when there's a full moon, and we get this sort of upheaval of emotional energy, and things come online that aren't typical. Do you have any ideas as to what could be going on there, or why? Why would the abilities come and go with the
visits?
Right.
What I would say is, okay, first of all, I would say, well, there's a lot that plays into why me, why me. And I do think there might have been a capacity, if you want to believe, of familiar, like family lines. Actually, my cousin, who I'm kind of distant from, we don't see each other or anything like that. But she reached out to me. She's like, Dana, I just watched your YouTube. And it was one about the humming and the vibrations. And she goes, oh my God, I remember hummings and vibrations when I was small. And she just sent this to me about 2 days ago. And I've been kind of busy, so I haven't been able to get back to her. And I'm like, well, we're going to have to explore that, because yes, that would play into the whole family lines. But what I'm going to put to you is that I feel, because when they were in my room, when any of these aliens would visit me, the room is different. There's a different frequency. There's a different, and it's not like inside me. The room has an energy shift. There's like, the room has a different frequency. I don't know how to say this. Like right now in this room where I am, if it's calm, it's peaceful, it's normal. But when they're in there, it's like this, it's this vibrational, it's a different thing. It's almost like, a fish needs to be in water. I believe that these beings need to be in a different frequency. And so maybe this is a spin-off or whatever, that I was saturated in this frequency. And so, the saturation is with me. As in, if I'm cutting onions, the onions have this scent, and now the scent is on my fingers. And the next day I could probably smell the scent. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you're saturated with it. It rubs off on you. And that's what happens. If that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. I just want to bring up like sound healing, sympathetic resonance, that concept where, one sound can cause the vibration or frequency of something else to change,
Right.
momentarily.
Well, that sound is huge, because sound, the bass can put out a fire. A pounce of of bass can, knock out the oxygen to disrupt a fire. Also, you should all know that sound is illegal in the United States to use as a weapon. Oh, okay. Why did you make that law? Because sound can be used as a weapon. And if it can be used as a weapon, can sound not be that? For me, this is what then isn't the opposite true? Can't sound also be used then for healing? I think everything is frequency. And I do believe that's how we travel. I mean, that's how actual space travel is. I believe that's how they travel. It's through frequency, folding time and space, all that kind of thing. Nobody sits in a tin can to go through the universe. I'm just saying.
Before we move on from the telekinesis abilities, were you able to influence things with some kind of precision? Like, could you, was it just random, the effect that it would have on the device, or could you think, I want to make it do this, and it would do that?
Right.
It was with precision.
Well, to be fair, the things that I was dealing with, back in the day, there weren't a lot of devices to make precise. For example, again, like I said, there was this digital clock. Digital clocks had been around, but not a lot of people had them back in the day. My dad was an electrical engineer, and of course, we were kind of one of the first families to have one. So as I said, I could pulse the clock, which was upsetting to my dad, because the clock was then all 888. He'd have to reset it. And as we know, well, we have, daylight savings time. Nobody likes to run around resetting your clock. So 888, what I could not do, I think your question is, I couldn't make it say 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
That would be precision.
Right.
That would be another level. I couldn't do that. And maybe I could have, but I didn't know. Nobody's working with me or telling me. This is just osmosis. This isn't,
right.
There's nobody helping me. I'm just figuring all these things out. And back up just a side moment, back to when I'm an infant, and we had a dog that was chained up outside. And again, I didn't realize this until I was writing my book, that when I was about 4 or 5, and I think this is the beginning of me giving tours through the house. Okay. And the dog was typically chained up outside. And I'm sure we were going outside as well. But it was at that time that the dogs started. Now, I'm a small child, but the dogs started to snap at neighborhood children, the small neighborhood children, not the tall ones, but the small ones. And so my dad took the dog to be put down. It was snapping. It didn't actually hurt anybody, but, he thought that was, upsetting. And why is this family dog doing this. But as I was writing the book, I realized the dog was trying to protect us. The dog was seeing these other children as the same as the Greys. So the dog, for me, was almost another witness.
And maybe was traumatized by.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Potentially,
Everything.
Maybe that's why that happened, and it became mean, because that's what happens with dogs. They go through trauma. They
Right.
can start to have behaviors.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't mean. She was always great. But it was if a small child came into our yard, not a taller one, but a smaller one, about the size of the Greys. And then I have another Grey story if you're ready to get into that. It's about the same timeline.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is, and it wasn't, okay. So here I am about this age, about 4, 5. I'm little. I know I'm little, and I'm not across the street. So, here we're in a typical neighborhood, suburbia. Okay. And across the street was the neighbor's house. And then behind their yard was a lake. And it was a good sized man-made lake. And there was a train track trestle, that kind of was about 5 houses down, but it, cut across the lake, or, kind of this stream that went into this man-made lake, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm down by the lake on the beach, kind of in a yard with other kids about my age and older kids, a lot of older kids. There's probably about 8 of us down there. And I recall it's a, kind of a spring day. And I recall looking down at the water because I thought it was fascinating. I'm looking at all the things and blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking at the water, I'm looking down, and all of a sudden, boop, this yard had kind of a hill with trees. And all of a sudden I'm up the hill in the trees, and I'm with Greys. And I can see them kind of. I can see their faces. I can see their bodies now. But it's fast. Like they're fast moving, and I can't really see them, but I can see them.
The Greys are moving. They're moving around quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can see them, but you can't see them, which this is typical of in the future of some other interactions that I had. You can kind of see them, but you can't see them because, again, let me say, it's frequency. So I think because they're outside, they're creating a frequency. They probably had like a area that they could hold this frequency in so that they could be there, if that makes any sense. So then, they're working in this frequency. It's different than our normal 3D frequency, if that makes any sense. So I think they're in this frequency, and us humans can't really pick up on that. Anyway, so I'm up there with them. They seem kind of, their affect or, is nice. I mean, I felt like, for me, thinking it's like they're smiling, they're nice, blah, 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 playful. This is what I'm thinking at the time. I'm kind of like, oh, why can't I see you? La, 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 all these kinds of things. Next thing I know, I'm back down by the water. And I'm like, oh, I'm by the water. And I'm looking up, and I was kind of like, wanted the other kids to go up and see them. But at the same time, I was telepathically talking to the aliens in that, come out, let's play. These are my friends. Come out, let's play. Because I felt dismissed. Now I'm down by the water. Come out, let's play. I want to interact. Like, let's do something. Like, this is fun, as if they're friendly and we know each other. This is how I'm feeling at the time. Okay.
So you weren't in fear at all during this experience?
No, exactly. Because I think this is also during the times of me giving tours of my house, and I wouldn't have done that, if I was in fear. I think I have these memories, but they're just kind of like, I remember when I was giving the tours and everything, it's just kind of like neutral, like, oh, and here's the kitchen, like I'm a really sad realtor. Here's the kitchen,
Dana, let me ask this question. Now, when did you start to put all this together?
Well, this is just all happening. I mean, there's no putting it together. It's just my life.
I mean, going back into your memories, when did you start doing it? Was this something recent that you're like, hey, I need to start putting this together chronologically and seeing like a regression?
No, there was never a thought of that because it was my life. I mean, that's kind of like, oh, like putting together being with your brother and sister. I mean, there's no difference for me. This
So
was
it was,
part of my life. There was, the only thing was like, maybe you could say it's like visiting your cousins at grandma's house because it was sporadic. It wasn't all the time. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, grandma's house. Oh yeah, the cousins, and like I said, I think there was a little something going on to make me kind of forget about it. Or maybe that was just part of childhood. But I want to go back to this moment of being down by the water. So here I am. I'm back down by the water. And my initial thought is that, because all I have to do is remember that this is a memory that I've never forgotten. This is just part of my life, like visiting grandma's house. So down by the water again, I'm like, oh, where'd they go? Are they still up there? And I kind of was like, kind of wanting to halfway go up, but I couldn't see them, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I'm realizing that my behind, my fanny, was in pain. It felt like a sharp stick had been stabbed into the backside, just a little bit above my, the cheeks, just kind of like that little, right before the split, a little, that, there's, just when you start to have your buttocks, I felt like somebody had stabbed me, like one of the kids or something like that. And I was like, what? Like, now I'm in pain. I'm hurt. I don't feel good, And so I took off from the group. I went home. And I went home and I went into the bathroom and I got my little stool because I had to have a stool to wash my hands. And I climbed up the stool and got up on the countertop and tried my best to look into the mirror to see my fanny, my backside. And there was no blood or anything. It seemed almost kind of healed, like a red spot, but there was like an indentation there where the pain was.
Or a scoop mark. Would you consider that a scoop
completely.
Mark? Like something had, like a piece of skin had been removed almost.
Yeah. And as an adult, because I remember going to a chiropractor one time because I was like, I think this is unusual. I don't think this is normal. And I had a good friend who was a chiropractor. I'm like, hey, do you see this a lot on backsides, like this missing, this scoop or where it's, I mean, I don't think most chiropractors see people's butts, but I kind of showed him like, do you see this, blah, blah, blah. He just kind of poo-pooed it or whatever. But I mean, it's there. And then like, fast forward, this is literally chapter 1 of my book. I'm an adult now. It's probably 1990. Oh gosh, 90, maybe 95, 90. No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's say 96, 95, something like right about there. I'm talking to the neighbor end of the block and we're chatting away and I'm just kind of like, blah, 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 kind of how you do. I'm scratching my back because, the back of my neck, because I think I have a zit and it's ready to pop and I'm scratching it. And, we're talking. So part of my brain is like worrying that, like playing with this. And the other part is like talking to her and listening, half listening, I guess. And then it popped and I brought my finger forward. I was doing it sly. That's kind of what we do. And I'm going to look at it and I'm expecting, I'm sorry for a better term, a piece of pus or goo, white or bloody or something. And it was a complete little bitty thing. I don't know if you could like bitty, like itty bitty like that. It looked like kind of like a gray screen. And I was like, all of a sudden, like I'm doing this and my girlfriend's like, what? And I'm like, do you see that? Like, look at this. And she goes like this, and I'm doing this, and it's not crumbling or changing or blah, blah, blah. And then she goes like this and takes it off my finger, and then she has it on her finger, and we're examining it, looking at it. And she goes, yeah, this is metal. Like, what is this? This came out of your neck. And then she's like checking out the back of my neck. There's no blood or anything. There's like a area. She's like, wow. I mean, we could ask her in detail more what she saw, but we're sitting there and we're examining it. And now I'm telling you, we have both kind of squished it and mushed it around to see if it would break up or like it was a dirt, Was it this, that, or the other thing? And she's like, no, this is a real structure type thing. And as we're examining it like this, it disintegrates and disappears. And she's like, whoa. I mean, we both went, what? And it disappeared. And it had probably been there like a minute, which doesn't seem like a lot of time. But if you're standing there looking at something, you count off a minute, it's a long time. And we had both been, rubbing it, and it was just sitting there. So it wasn't like it disintegrated while she was rubbing it. We were just looking at it, and it disintegrated in the middle of the air. Now, at that time, we were both going to see this woman. Her name was like Wentworth or something like that. And she would do like an ethereal or whatever. She would do alien extractions of tech from your body.
Surgery or...
Yes. And she would do that. And typically you could be there and you would lay there and she would go whatever on you. And I'm like, I don't know if this is working or real, but I'm kind of like, because, my neighbor's like, hey, you probably have alien tech inside of you. You should probably get rid of that stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I pay this woman. Yeah.
She thought there was alien tech in you. She said that.
Well, my neighbor did, because she's like, you've grown up with aliens. So she's like, you probably have alien tech inside of you. You should probably look into getting that extracted. Now, this is the 90s. Not a lot of people were doing this, but we had this. She knew this woman who was nearby. And so I paid the money and, did a number of sessions with this woman. And so when this thing popped out, my neighbor was like, oh my gosh, well, we've been doing these sessions to extract alien technology, implants. I guess it worked. But we were thinking on an ethereal level, or, just kind of like a, whatever level. But this was actual physical tech that had extracted itself from my body. So I was kind of like, well, okay, great. Because, I got my money's worth then, right? So we were kind of happy. I mean, we were kind of like shocked. And, like that really happened. It was kind of like, what? So I don't know where that technology came from. What did it come from the scoop and worked its way up to my neck, or was it always there? Was it a tracking device? I have no answers. All I can tell you is that was the experience.
Well, let's go back to that. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say, you said something about you had something happen on your butt. And I'm thinking, well, could that have been something that eventually worked its way up? Right. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that just leads us to the question of, in all these encounter experiences where they took you, what were they doing each time? What do you think was being done?
I can't tell you. As a child, I don't know. We'll get into a different experience later on, as we talk. But as a child, I think it's really interesting that I was giving tours. I think they were kind of learning what it's like to have life on the planet. They're exploring. So you could say they could have been experimenting on my body. And certainly when I was a baby, what were they doing with me? I have no idea. I don't know if they were extracting eggs, because I had children, and later on other aliens came to extract eggs. I don't know what they were doing with me as an infant. All I can say, in all fairness, is that at one point I'm giving tours, and I've got the the scoop. I'm thinking there was an implant. I know an implant physically came out of my neck, and it was witnessed. And that is something that, as a child growing up, I was always like, why are there witnesses? Why do I have witnesses to a lot of the things that have happened to me? And the voice was like, so that you'll know, and I'm like, what do you mean? And now as an adult, I'm like, it calms me, because I wouldn't believe any of this. And I would think, you're like, well, you've got some issues, I don't know. But to have normal people back me up and say, no, Dana, I saw it. I was with you. My neighbor's an English teacher. I mean, Jennifer, or, Jenny Jo, she's a normal a woman who's in business herself. You know, I mean, these are normal people and they're witnessing things that have happened to me. And to me, I feel like if I didn't have these things, I would have more anxiety. I mean, like, you know,
Mm.
I mean, if I could go to the doctor and they're like, well, you're schizophrenic or psychotic or something, let's put you on, you know, that would be welcoming to me. Like, oh, you made all that stuff up. I mean, that would be great. I'm like, okay, great. That's my own, you know, like I'm a loony, but no, you know, the witnesses back up everything that I've experienced, almost everything. And then I feel like, and this is the reason, also another reason why I wrote the book, because I feel as if this isn't just my experience. I am a person who's here to share this for others so others will know and I can substantiate their experiences. You know, I'm here to share this because if it was just about me, I don't think I'd have witnesses. The fact that there are all these witnesses speaks to me that that it's outside of me, that it's for others, and it's for others to hear and know and share, and we can all learn and piece it together, you know, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting back to in terms of speculating as to what they were doing. So some people think that scoop marks in particular are samples being removed, you know, that they're taking genetic material from you.
Right.
Although you seem to be indicating maybe that the scoop mark incident was maybe isolated, or did you have other incidents where you had marks on you or
No.
scoop marks?
Nope. I've never had another trace of anything else. And let's back up to that day. I'm going to tell you, and it wasn't until I was writing the book, I was like, oh my God, because my dad was an electrical engineer. And I'm not quite sure at this time if he was with Honeywell or UNIVAC or whatever, but I'm going to tell you. See, this was the crazy thing when I started to write, you know, it started to unlock because I was paying more attention, delving into these stories and actually really trying to, before I wrote these things, put myself back in the situation and think about it, like what was going on. And when I wrote the book, I'm like, and for me and Jenny Jo, who was the lady that I met, and she said, yes, I remember the humming and the vibrations. We both dream about this house where that had the hill on the lake. But the crazy thing is, who lived in that house? My dad's boss. That was his house. My dad's boss
And he
was
worked
at that
with
house.
someone, the spear, was he
Like
with Spear?
Sperry Honeywell or Spear UNIVAC or whatever it was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of like, oh, well, there's a connection, isn't it? You know? Yeah, I thought that was at least interesting.
Right. Yeah, there could be something to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was my dad's work because my dad worked on the supercomputer. And, you know, I tried to tell my sister many, many times. I'm like, hey, back then in the 60s and 70s, they were trading alien technology for experimentation. And at my dad's funeral, a man came up to my sister and I, as my dad's coffin was just being put into the back of the hearse, he goes, yeah, something about my dad. He had been let go. He had been fired. And he was like, I don't know why they let him go, because he changed the supercomputer. Your dad was a genius, and then they let him go. And he goes, and I never could figure that out. So there's a lot of things about my dad that are playing out right now. I think with the CIA, I was just handed a file from out of the blue. I'm like, what is that? Anyway, so it's just intriguing. A lot of things just keep unfolding as I've come out of what I call the cosmic closet, because I've been hiding in it. I haven't been telling anybody, but now I'm getting my voice out there. And so a lot of strange things are happening, which is amazing. But anyway, yeah. So, and then this guy, I think he was a CIA agent or a white hat. I don't even know. So this is recently, just a few months ago, mysteriously calls me up and says he's got a file on my dad. And inside the file are some classified papers that talk about my dad going to and speaking and being involved with NASA. And he went to various different sites around the United States with NASA, and nobody in my family knew about this, and I had also prayed for, because let's fast forward a little bit to when I'm 8 years old. My dad was involved in politics after a while. Both my parents were, and he knew Hubert Humphrey. My parents were Republicans. Hubert Humphrey was a Democrat, but my mom always used to say, it's so delightful, or whatever, that Hubert Humphrey knows my name, and my parents had very unusual names. So that was weird.
For those that aren't aware, Hubert Humphrey was he a senator, or what was he?
Yes. Okay. And he ran for president, and was he vice president at one point? No, I don't think so. But anyway, he was up there and doing a lot in the 60s and 70s. But
and your dad knew him personally?
Well, not personally, but politically, and first name basis, this, that, and the other thing. And I've been praying, during the writing of the book and stuff like that. I'm like, because, my parents have been gone. My dad's been gone since 2010, and while we were just getting rid of papers and files, and now I wish I could have gone through them a little bit deeper. But, so I was like, I don't even have a picture of my dad with Hubert Humphrey or any of these things. Oh, well, guess what? Just a few months ago when I got that file, there are pictures of my dad with Hubert Humphrey, and all these kinds of things that I'm like, wow, is somebody listening to my prayers? This is fantastic. This is crazy. So anyway, okay. So I'm 8 years old, and my parents are involved in politics, as I said, and they take me out of school one day, and we drive to the Rochester airport. So it's the middle of the day, or, kind of like, I don't know, 10, 11 in the morning, blah, blah, blah. We go to the Rochester airport, not Minneapolis. So I grew up in Fridley. So just so you know kind of where I am in the United States, a suburb of Minneapolis, and Minnesota has the Mississippi River, running through. We're at the beginning of the Mississippi River, which kind of splits the country, right? I'm thinking everybody knows where that is. So we've got Minneapolis, and that's where I live. And Rochester's kind of more towards Iowa, almost, towards the end, that little blip. And that's where the Mayo Clinic is. So if anybody's familiar with the Mayo Clinic, that's Rochester. So we drive to Rochester. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. We get out, we go pick up some name tags, and we step outside onto the tarmac, and we're waiting there. And all of a sudden, here comes Air Force One. And out pops Richard Nixon and Pat Nixon. And the thing of it is that Pat Nixon walked, like, the C parts of all the people's butts, the C parts, and Pat Nixon is holding one long stem red rose, and she walks up straight to me, not my sister, and there's really no other children there. And to be fair, my parents used to take me to a lot of political parties, cocktail parties, and I'd be the only kid. All the other kids would be locked away in the bedroom. Why am I there? Anyway, she hands me a long stem rose and then is scooted away. And basically after that, the media comes up. There was no, to the best of my knowledge, there was no television, but there was radio and the newspapers. And so they interviewed me, blah, blah, blah. Who are you? And I didn't really think much of it. And I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to put this up to the camera right now. Hopefully you can see this. It says special guest.
Right there.
And you can see the date, and it says presidential visit. Special guest. And this is October, 29th, 1970. I even looked up the numbers and what the numbers mean. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Can you see that? I don't know. I'm it's kind of. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yep. Special guest. What the heck? Why am I a presidential special guest? Right?
How exclusive is that?
You tell me. And why did I get a red rose? And why nobody else? And why am I probably pretty much the youngest person there? I mean, that's a lot of questions. I don't know. I don't know the answers for it. But the voice said to me, hang on to this name tag. So I hung on to that name tag. See, what I'm saying is, like, I've had this voice, the supernatural, telling me or guiding me and helping me, whoever and whatever you want to call it. But so I did. I here I am, an 8-year-old. Why am I hanging on to a stupid name tag? But I think it's interesting that there's the date. How many name tags have a date, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, so who knows what that means? But to me, when I was writing the book, I'm like, oh, Sub Rosa was this Freemason thing. Oh, and let me tell you this. So I'm writing the book. I'm like, I want to know more about this flight. So, or this, why are they in Rochester? All this kind of stuff. It was a political hoorah thing, but I'm digging around because that's what I do. I like to substantiate things. I like to look, I like to dig in. So I look and I find, there's the presidential diaries. So I go into this date. And yes, I'm finding Richard Nixon's personal log, you could say. And they also had the flight manifestos because there was a number of flights that they took that day. And I think the flight before that, they were in Milwaukee. And so I saw who was on the flight list, who was aboard on the airplane. And it's naming everybody, just everybody except for Pat Nixon. So I'm like, okay, well, you could say that was an error. Like somebody forgot to put her on Milwaukee's flight. But they didn't even have her on the Minneapolis flight. And in fact, she wasn't noted at all for that day. Pat Nixon didn't exist that day. If you wanted to say, here was what happened with Richard Nixon, she's not anywhere to be named.
What about the media report?
They're all named. Everybody's named. Yeah, the AP, whatever. All these people are named. You can go in. You can all go into Richard Nixon's or the presidential diaries. Go find Richard Nixon. Go on into October 29th. And you can look, because like when I've done other interviews, I captured that. I have a copy of it, of those papers. And I didn't realize this until, actually, I think I was still writing the book, that she is not noted. So it's like she didn't exist, which to me, I find that very interesting, like what was going on there.
Right. It's interesting. And less, is there any type of sort of protocol, for when, heads of state are traveling around that for security purposes, they don't list their names potentially? Did you verify that? Do they normally, is it customary for them to be, say, on the manifest or the docker?
Well, he was on it, and
so he was on it.
Oh, okay. He's on it, and every all these goofball people. There was probably about 30 people on the flight.
That's interesting. Then, yeah,
wouldn't they say Pat Nixon, president? They go in and look at it. It names everybody all the way down to goofus people. Just whatever, random people. Pat Nixon should have been on there. And if she wasn't like last minute, I don't think so. Because another thing that I found was she was, when she was given the roses, she was given them, I believe it was in Milwaukee. So I found a picture of her receiving the roses. And then when she gets to Minneapolis, she just, instead of holding the roses, like, oh, here are the roses, she has one rose, and then she gives that to me, So anyway, I found that interesting in that she's not noted. And I had no idea, but I do find that odd because when you're making all these notes, they're talking literally in his log. They're like, 11:45 calls, let's just pretend, calls Hubert Humphrey, 11:32 eats a sandwich. They break down his whole day. They break down everybody on the flight. Go look at it, but she's not noted anywhere. I don't know.
That's strange.
I know. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting too.
Do you want to, what's the deal with your father? I was expecting that you were going to go into this in Basis 40, but you never really did. What is his background?
Right.
What did he know? Do you think he knew anything about what you were going through, or did he know about ET or
I don't know. I never, before, I don't mean to say this, but before their deaths, when they were very old, I asked both of them, I'm like, do you remember ever having any, and I'm going to say this, I had never spoke to them about my alien experiences, not a word. Okay. So here they are. they're in their 80s. And I'm like, you better ask this question because there's not much time left. My dad was kind of on his way out and, not doing well. And I'm like, ask them just kind of randomly, do you guys ever remember any aliens or seeing aliens, or what do you think about aliens? They're like, nope, no, like, well, why are you asking or whatever? And I didn't explain. I didn't go into my story, nothing.
And they were genuinely taken aback by that. They didn't.
Yeah. They were like, why? Yeah. They're like, that's random. Like, why are you asking us that? And I didn't go into it because I didn't want to go into it, but I just out of the blue had to ask them, if they knew anything about that. Now, my dad's mother had the gift. I'm kind of finding out that there was maybe something in my mother's lineage, like my cousin who just kind of came out and said she remembers vibrations and humming. But so my dad went to Korea, and he was a radio operator in a tank. And apparently he was one of the missions he was on. He and the other person in the tank, I don't know if there was more than the two of them, but they were lost behind enemy lines, which might have saved his life because apparently his unit was basically gone by the time he got back. So somehow or another, they got lost. All these things. And so while he was in Korea, I don't know how long his tour was supposed to be, but much to everyone's chagrin, the military kept keeping him. He kept being asked to stay. So, and I can't tell you, to be fair, how long he was re-upped, but he didn't want to be, he wanted to go home, but he was kept over and over. There's a huge part of me that thinks he might have been a Manchurian candidate. And
he actually said that.
No, he did not. I suspect it. I think.
Now, when you say Manchurian candidate, you're talking about trauma-based mind control.
Exactly. Yeah.
There should have been signs of that you would have witnessed. Personality shifts, or did he have trauma in his do you know anything about his childhood?
I'm not sure. Well, yeah, there's things about his childhood, but I know that he suffered greatly from PTSD. I know he had night traumas. I mean, just for him to go to sleep, I mean, he would just yell, and just a lot of things, traumatized in that way. I mean, for my dad, he was just a very happy-go-lucky man. Like if you said, "Hi, Don," he'd be, "How you doing?" He'd be like, "Awesome." He'd grab you. He's demonstrative, like hugging everybody, and I think that's where I get a lot of that, but I also feel like he's faced death. And I feel as if I've kind of faced death. And it's when you face this realization that you might not be here tomorrow, you kind of look at life a little bit differently. And on Basis 140, I did get into, he had this strange radio in the basement. And I really didn't think about this until kind of when I was writing the book. And I didn't put it in the book. I don't know why, and I probably should have. And I'm going to tell you, while I was writing, I did talk to this other woman, and she lives more by 3M. Which is in St. Paul. And her dad was in the Korean War. Her dad was a radio operator, but I don't think he was in the tank. They were both in the Army, infantry. And her dad had this kind of radio in the basement. Now, what I'm going to say, because Miles did show me kind of a contraption that you could say was kind of close, but his was more square. What he showed me, his was more like this. What my dad had was more like this size. It had kind of that bubbly green spray paint on it, kind of had like this dial, la, la, la. And I remember asking my dad, what is that? And he goes, "Oh, well, I can talk to people around the world." He'd talk to people in Australia, this, that, and the other thing. Now we're talking about in the 60s, long distance on the phone would cost you a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. But my dad could just talk on this radio, which is, you could say, okay, fine. But if you've ever seen ham radio operations, the units are usually, back in that day, quite a bit larger. But here's a fun fact. We had no antenna. So how can you talk to anybody? He's in the basement. How are you talking to people?
Yeah, I mean, Australia, I mean, you would need something, right, to transmit a signal long distances, some kind of antenna.
Well, he said around the world. So he had people that he was talking to, and he'd talk at night. And because I never witnessed him doing it during the day. Literally, I never really heard him, but I'm a child. I'm not paying attention. And this was in the basement and kind of in a different space. But I do remember asking him about it and what it was for and blah, blah, blah. And he said, you know, he would talk to people from around the world. And as I'm, you know, writing the book, I'm like, baloney. How are you talking around the world? Because I took ham radio operation when I was in high school. You know, I learned Morse code and all that kind of stuff. I failed that test. But anyway, but, you know, so I know, and I see people, you know, with ham radio towers and those kinds of things. I don't know if they still need them today. They probably do, but we didn't have one. And there was no axial cable. There was only an electrical plug. There was no real cable because there was nothing to plug into. There was no cable running anywhere to plug into anything. And I can super remember this because we cleaned that office out. Now that piece of tech, that equipment kind of went missing. Now I did, to be fair, move out and I was married and stuff like that. So I don't know when this technology left the basement.
It went missing mysteriously.
I know. I'm sure my dad, you know, whatever, got rid of it. You know, I don't know. I'm a teenager, or you know, getting married and dating.
Was he sensitive in any kind of way around it, as if, you know, because if that was, you know, some kind of high technology that he had access to, there would be, you would think, you know, some kind of protective measures that you think he would.
Nope, it was just there. And if I think I used to turn it on and off. It would just, you know, hum like a normal radio, you know, like a powerful radio, you know, not like a transistor, you know, cheapy thing, you know, it would hum and stuff like that. But no, there was no protection. He never said like, don't touch this or anything like that. There was no, you know, it wasn't screwed down to anything, you know, it was just there. But, you know, now I'm realizing it wasn't connected to anything. So how is this possible? It's not.
Dana, let me ask this question. Since you brought up the radio part, I had seen somebody had wrote on a comment here, and I'm going to bring this up because this is very possible, especially since you brought up the radio. Do you think that you was part of a project, a secret project, that your dad knew about, but he never said anything? He could not say anything because you mentioned about this radio now, and I'm starting to think, hey, possibly he was involved with something and you were involved with it as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure of that. But now that you're saying this, it just triggered a thought that's in that file. There is a, God, and the guy who handed me the file, who didn't know my dad, and that's a whole big story, who didn't know my dad or anything like that. And he's an IT guy, and he's, you know, younger because my dad was older. He said, oh, I wish I knew your dad. I wish I worked with your dad. I'm like, why would you say that? Because he said he bought a desk 30 years ago and this file was in it, and that is complete baloney. That's
Spirit went defunct in 1986. So,
yeah. Well, the files in there go to 2005. Anyway, there's a picture of in there, and I think my dad's in the picture, but there's a bigger unit. It's a little bit bigger with these men all standing around like it's a professional picture from like Sperry would have taken this, you know, like here's our new MJ300, you know, with all the engineers standing around it. So that's in that file over there. Now this, whatever this thing is way bigger than what we had. But now I'm kind of wondering, I'm going to take a look at that thing. I'm going to post that thing. I'm going to find out about that thing because I wonder if that thing is related to the thing that was in our basement. But see, what I'm saying is that this girlfriend of mine, her dad had a unit very similar, small. We talked about it, small, no antenna. He talked around the world. He was a radio operator. He was also in Korea. He also worked for UNIVAC. But he was supposedly just a janitor. And we were like, what? Anyway, so that's gonna be my new next exploration. But thank you for bringing that up, because I wonder what that thing was that's in that picture. Because I'm just getting this huge file. I'm just trying to figure it out. Oh, and there was a thing in there, a letter from this girl, and I don't think she was the secretary, but she had to be CIA and something like that too. That's a whole nother long story. Anyway, oh my gosh, it's just too much. It's just, see, now that I'm coming out of the cosmic closet, all this other stuff is coming out as well. So, which is interesting. I don't know. Anyway,
were there any confidential files in that packet that you were given?
Well, it said classified.
They said classified on it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking this when I was watching Bases 140. I mean, what are the chances that classified documents would have been left behind in a desk?
No. And the thing of it is, this file, I was expecting just like a paper file folder, but this is one of those brown ones that's kind of like a accordion or something. And it was perfectly clean. Now, I don't know about you, but I have sons, and they have desks in their rooms, or your dresser. Come on, your dresser. You know what? Take out the bottom drawer of any dresser in your house. I'm sorry. I know you might be very, very clean, but there's going to be dust and stuff. And on paper, like, I'm a mom and I clean. Like, literally, if that file had been sitting behind this desk for 30 years when he supposedly bought this desk, and he's just cleaning it out now. Oh, and he also said, when your book gets really famous and popular or whatever, come back and sign it for me. And I'm like, why are you making that statement? I don't, just none of it made sense. But anyway, that file folder is perfectly clean. All of the papers inside of it, I mean, perfectly clean. He wouldn't be sitting there with a brush going, I'm going to clean this file folder. And he's not like, oh, I'm going to get a new file folder for Dana. And all the papers are white still. You know what I mean? Over time, they would have yellowed. And the original first papers were from 1960. Okay. They go from 1960 to 2005.
So those papers would have definitely appeared to be aged if they were that old.
Oh, right. It's very strange. This whole file folder, it's like another book all by itself.
So let's just speculate then. So if that was just sort of concocted, and those weren't original old files like that, I mean, that's quite a operation, to sort of fabricate all that.
Oh, no. This is all real. This is not fabricated. And in fact, one of the things, there was pictures in there.
You said that they don't seem dated. Like they don't seem like they were really from that long ago.
Oh, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that they're not yellowed, because most paper turns yellow after time. Ages and turns yellow, brittle, this, that, or the other thing. All of these papers are pristine and still white. Well, so that means they were, to me, kept well.
Could they have been? Could that be declassified information? Even though you see there's a classified thing, I mean, it's very hard to walk out of some place with classified documents, but it is possible. And that's what I'm saying. Could it have been, since there was no dust or anything, could it have been declassified stuff? And they put them in that folder, and he got a hold of that folder over some time and gave it to you.
Well, his story is that he found it behind the desk, but literally these papers would say, I mean, on them, because some of them are like my dad's application for work or whatever it was, but it would say classified stamped on the paper, so many of the, things in the file are not classified things. It was almost as if they were collecting information on my dad, because there was pictures of me, a picture of me, a picture of my mom, a picture of my sister, a picture of an exchange student that we had visiting our house. There was also our Christmas list of all the people that my parents would send Christmas cards to, like handwritten and, kind of all jankety, like their Christmas card list. And it was unstapled, so my dad I remember the paper, and he used to be at our house and had a staple in it. And I do remember my dad saying that he gave it to his secretary early on in the 70s. and that she was going to type it up so that they could run it off at work and then actually have Christmas labels so that my parents didn't have to handwrite the Christmas card list. So, but the sheets were unstapled. And as far as I knew, the secretary would have gotten rid of that list. But here it is in the file. You know, it's as if somebody took it out of the garbage, or they were collecting and swiping things off of my dad's desk. You know, here were all these things, random things, all in this file. It's as if, oh, we know these things about you. You know, like we're collecting information on you.
Yeah, which is why I had said about maybe your dad being in a secret space program type of thing that he surely wasn't going to say anything to you about, or your mom, or anybody else for that matter, because of the sensitivity of the project.
Right. So. And you should also know that gentlemen would stop by at our house. I remember one guy, I think he drank 2 cases of beer. He was just blotto, basically. But he was Black Ops. I mean, they just talked about it. I mean, they knew it because it, you know, la la la, and I knew about it. I'm a little girl, but I mean, he knew all these Black Ops people, and you know, personally, I don't even know. Yes, I 100% believe that he was in some kind of program, secret program. I don't know what program I was put into, but basically, I had to have been in some type of program because let's go back. Here's Pat Nixon coming straight up to me, you know. And I've got the name, you know, I don't know. I have more questions than answers, but I have experiences and I just can present them, you know.
So was your dad involved with the development of the UNIVAC computer systems?
He's the one that this man said at the funeral. He said, your dad changed the supercomputer. So my dad is apparently the one that, you know, like blew it up, like, okay, now here's the supercomputer. You know, your dad is the one that changed the supercomputer, which means he had some, like, and the guy said he was a genius, you know, so.
Right. It sounds like there was something groundbreaking about the UNIVAC computer systems.
Yes.
Maybe, have you ever delved into UNIVAC computer systems? Was there something, you know, like about them that was, maybe a peculiar advancement of the day that didn't seem plausible based on other technologies at the time?
Not really. I mean, you know, I've got, you know, when I was doing the book, there's just so many other things that I'm researching. I only go so far. And just to be fair, you know, up until recently, you know, because a lot of people will name drop, well, do you know about this, or, you know, that, and I'm like, no, and no, because first of all, before I wrote the book, I wanted to be in a state of denial, like, you don't talk about this stuff. So I just kind of kept to myself. I had very few friends I would talk to about it. Certainly my children knew about certain things because there was the paranormal and the supernatural was happening at our house. They were privy to it. My husband did not know about any of this. We don't discuss this to this day because he would come unglued, you know. But anyway, so I kept quiet. And also there was a part of me that didn't want to insert other people's ideas and stories and thoughts into my thoughts. So I kept very clean. I'm a mom and I'm busy. I don't have time. I'm not on a lot of social media. I just got onto Facebook probably around 2010 or something like that, or 2011, maybe a little bit later, you know, and I don't have a lot of time, or didn't, you know, so I don't go doing all these things. I tried to stay very clean and pristine about all these things. So for me now, you know, like I said, with the whole file, like a lot of this stuff is coming forward and unraveling for me. And there's a lot of, I don't even know what to make of it. And I feel I do have a moment, just to be fair, of anxiety, of like, oh my God, and I'm putting myself out here. And do I even understand or know what I'm getting myself into? Because there's a huge part of me. I don't want to go into like a fear thing, because I have a huge issue with that. being in the vibration of fear, because I think that's exactly what they want us to do, is be in fear. And if you are in that vibration, you know, you can create those things. You know, I don't know if that makes any sense. So I haven't been researching. I researched what I needed to do and look at for my book to substantiate my personal firsthand experiences. People have always told me there's another book, and maybe this book is about my dad. Maybe these things will come forward, and then I can dig in and research. Sorry, that was a really long answer for you. No. Now I can go in and answer, you know, like now I can go in and dig. I did do a little bit of research on Spirit Univac, and that some of the original guys died, like the one guy died in an airplane crash. I do go into a little bit of that, but I was like, holy moly, here's a big, huge rabbit hole. I can only spend 5 minutes on this. I can't do a whole big thing. But maybe now, after getting this file folder and stuff, yeah, maybe that's the other book. I don't know.
You know, it is possible that there is some kind of secret program, because Univac had the SAGE project, and that was a project where they come up with an early warning system, a radar system to pick up enemy bomber activity. So if this picked up alien aircraft,
right?
I mean, it is so possible.
Right. Okay. So let's look at Minnesota back in the day. Okay. Let's take a look at Minnesota. Okay. So I believe personally that spacecraft aliens love to run up and down waterways. And we got the Mississippi Strait in the middle of this whole big piece of land called the United States, right? So that's a great highway for them to follow, because you could go, you know, some ET could say to another ET, like, you know, follow this waterway. It's easy to navigate and see. So, but in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, we had FMC, which had naval, you know, they were building weaponry. We have the TCAAP, which is the Twin Cities Army Armory ammunition plant, which is it's a deep underground military base. And I'm trying to disclose that to people too. My sister's been in the tunnels down there. My sister who didn't have a college education was given, she was hired as an engineer for Honeywell. Like, how does that happen? Anyway, so we got FMC, which is down East River Road. We've got TCAAP, which is here in Arden Hills off of 35W 96. And in Anoka, we had more. They were making shells and bullets and all this kind of stuff. So we had a lot of stuff going on here in this area. We have a lot of airports, all these kinds of things. But what I'm going to also say to you is we also had 3M, which everybody's like, oh, 3M. Oh, why'd they change it to 3M? Well, it used to be Minnesota Manufacturing and Mining. We had the Ford Motor Plant, which was on the river. And what did they do? Now, when I wrote my book and first came out, there's a man that I know who lived just a couple blocks north of the TCAAP in Arden Hills. And he goes, oh my God, I can't believe you wrote that. I worked in the paint department at the Ford Motor Plant. My dad worked in the glass department, and we always knew that there was something weird going on. Everybody knew it. We couldn't figure it out. But your book, now I can piece this together because of your book. I didn't realize any of the Ford Motor Plant until so.
Why would they think something weird is going on, or what were they noticing?
Here's the deal. So I thought I was going to write my book in like 9 months, like it was going to be nothing like do. I experienced it, so I'll just be able to write it. That's not what happened. But after 3 years of writing, I'm like, I think I pretty much got this. But I kind of said to Spirit, if there's anything you want to put in the book, I give you 1 year. I give you 1 year. And of course, then the wheels fell off the cart and blah, 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 blah. And that's when I saw Channel 2 here, PBS, had a whole thing on the Ford Motor Plant. And I'm watching it. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God. So what they talked about was that we have limestone and sandstone here in the Twin Cities underneath us, next to the rivers and all this kind of stuff. So Ford had his plant on the river, and he had a crew, and I don't know how big the crew was, sandblasting. Now, no charges, no blasting, no chiseling, air guns, 24/7, 7 days a week for decades, mining, drilling tunnels to collect the sand to make glass for the cars, for windows and all this kind of stuff, which is true, but it's not totally true. And that's why these two men that worked in the plant, thank you, witnesses, said everyone knew something was off. Now you got 3M and you have TCAAP, which has 4 to 5 levels of tunnels running underneath them. And everybody in my neighborhood could hear the trains running. And specifically under my house, I could hear things going on underneath my house, as if there was like a break room underneath my house. And I'm happy to say these things because I'm like, oh, you could say, oh, is that a bunch of baloney? But I would love it if somebody would come here with one of those things that can look in the ground, like see what's going on underneath the ground, because you'll find the ding tunnels. And I stand on it, you know? And so all of these things were happening here. And, you know, there's still Black Hawk helicopters coming out of the TCAAP. It is still undeveloped. It's like miles of blank land. I always, you know, because they were like, oh, we're going to put the Viking stadium there. And I said to my husband, they will never develop that land. And he's like, why? And I'm like, and I did tell him this. I mean, he thinks I'm joking. I'm like, well, there's aliens in there, you know, blah, blah, blah. But we have the sheriff's department. We've got the Red Bull infantry reserves. We got the army there, the sheriff, you know, we have the city, and, you know, all blocking off this whole area. This, you know, it's like, you know, there's all kinds of military personnel there. Why? You know, it's crazy. Like all on this just blank rolling hills, beautiful blank land, you know, but something's going on over there, people, you know. And recently, though, they did shut down. They've been kind of filling in some of the elevator shafts. Oh, anyway.
Yeah, and it's ground penetrating radar. That's what you need to see underneath, which would be awesome.
Let's do it.
You know what I mean?
See, this is the thing. Anything that I'm saying, I'm standing on it. I'm like, come on, please. You know, that's what I like. You can make a statement, but you better be able to back it up. And so when people, you know, like I have fear in coming out and saying these stories. I have fear that somebody's going to say, oh, baloney. So I have to stand on my truth firmly and say, no, these things happen. And I feel as if I am that person to say that and stand here and do this, because then, you know, everybody can substantiate it. And, oh, I have another good one about a UFO heading downtown. We got to talk about that in 1 second, because that's on TV. I mean, come and look, prove me wrong, because you can't. Because everything that I've experienced, I've looked it up or have had a witness. I'm standing strong in my story. And if you want, we can talk about what I just mentioned with the UFO.
Right. And see, there's a lot of big companies like 3M and they have been working with the government for a long, long time. So yes, there is a lot of secret projects even they have. They're not ever going to come out and say,
oh, no,
obviously. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, yeah, but when I was writing the book, I'm like, oh, I had to laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, they changed their name to 3M because they don't want you to remember it's Minnesota Manufacturing and Mining. Mining. What are they mining? Where are they mining? Mining. Everybody thinks they make Scotch tape or Post-it
they make
notes.
A lot of stuff, yeah.
They make a lot of stuff, and they do a lot of stuff. So anyway, so let's get into this other story, because this is a UFO. So here it is. Here I am. I'm sleeping. I'm probably about 15, 16, and I grew up in Fridley. You know, so the Twin Cities or Minneapolis is a straight shot. And I used to be able to see it from my bedroom because we had the IDS Center and you could almost see Fauché Tower. I don't think you can now because I guarantee you all those trees are way too tall. But I could see it back in the day. So for no particular reason, I'm sleeping and I wake up for no particular reason. And I don't have to pee, like there's, like there's nothing wrong. I just wake up, I obey, and I look out the window, and I remember smelling the putty in the wood, in the frame of the window. I could smell it, whatever. And I'm looking out the window, and all of a sudden, there goes a UFO. And I was like, whoa. And 1 second earlier, 1 second later, I wouldn't have seen it. So here's this UFO, and I'm like, oh, okay. Because as I'm looking like this, and the Mississippi River is over here, and the Twin Cities is right there, and right down there is the Ford Motor Plant. Right up behind me is the TCAAP. Anyway, and okay, and I go back to bed. I go to school. I come back home, seeing here comes another witness thing. Turn on the TV, and there's a television show. It's an afternoon, local, one of those jocular shows, with the host like, do, what's going on this weekend, la, la, la. And Steve and Sharon Edelman, and I believe it was called Twin Cities Today. Could have been called Good Company. But I put Twin Cities Today in my book because I was trying to get the years right, blah, blah, blah. But it's like 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm coming home, whatever. My mom would always have it on. She's ironing. At the end of the show, they would open up phone lines. I mean, like Steve and Sharon are not on the phone, but it's, speaker. And, they would be like, oh, what do you want to talk about? Well, I love that brownie recipe, or, whatever. They would talk to the audience, and they'd allow a couple of callers at the end of the show. Typical. And it's in the middle of the day, afternoon. So normally you're going to have women calling in, right? Most men are at work. So first caller, and it's a man. And he's like, did anyone see that UFO last night? And they're like, oh, click. All right. They hang up on him. Oh, well, wasn't that interesting? Oh my gosh, Steve. All right. Next caller, please. Guess what? Perfect. Another man. And he says, yes. And did anybody see the military following it? And in that moment, it was like, for me. Well, first of all, that the first guy said that. But when that man said that, it unlocked my memories. And that is part of what I was talking about earlier, of being eyes on the ground. Because when he said that, I saw the military, I saw what happened downtown, I saw the spacecraft, I saw the military kind of like the public was coming up this way, and these guys are hanging out the Jeeps and looking up, and one guy's trying to drive, and, so I saw the whole scene. But I was in Fridley, but there was, for whatever reason, I was the eyes on the ground, and I could see what was going on, but it substantiated what I saw in that split second, that moment that I was awake. And I knew about the whole thing all day. I'm like, well, I wonder what that was about. There was a part of me that would have been like, oh, you were imagining it. But I knew I wasn't imagining it. I knew I got up. I knew I looked out the window. I knew I waited for it, and it happened. And then I went back to bed. I completely know that. I know I'm not delusional. And I come home from school, and here's two men call up a television station, KSTP. And so I guarantee you, if somebody did a little bit of research, again, here I am standing on my facts. Somebody can go to KSTP, and somebody can find that beta tape. I'm sure it's probably on a beta tape. I think that's what they were called back then. If they keep those for that show, and you will hear those men say those words, and that happened. And yeah.
And so you didn't immediately remember the experience of seeing the military in pursuit of it. And
no.
That memory was triggered later. Why was
when
there
he said that?
Why was there that gap in your memory, do you think? And what do you, and the fact that you had gotten up and right precisely at the time that this was going by,
right? All I can say,
is there some kind of remote influencing going on?
Yeah. Well, I think because being with the Galactic Council, which I didn't understand at the time, or now until basically today, I think there was I'm a witness, and being eyes on the ground, I'm witnessing things, and it's not for the US government. It's not for the aliens, but it's kind of like a witness for the galaxy about what's going on. And somehow or another, I was able to remote view what was happening unbeknownst to me, in the moment of my 3D reality while it was happening, and it wasn't until the man said it that it triggered that memory to come forward. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I know about that.
Yeah, I just find it odd that that memory was suppressed and that
Yeah.
wasn't sort of contiguous, in
Right.
in your memory.
I thought so too. So what else is locked in there? But see, I think that's fair and true for a lot of contactees. I guarantee you,
Right.
how many people have no memory at all and don't know that they've ever been visited by an alien. Untold numbers. So this was just kind of, not a need to know moment. No need for me to know. I had to physically get up and witness it for them, but I don't need to be privy as to why and what. And I do know that.
One more thing before we move on to the experience of, I think maybe you should talk about the experience you had with your husband,
Right.
with the tree stump beings.
Sigmund the sea monster. Yeah.
Do you have missing time periodically where you can't account for doing something or periods of the day or anything like that?
No.
You don't
Well,
notice any missing time at all?
no, not.
Except for, though, in that experience where you saw the UFO, a whole thing happened where the military pursued it, and you didn't
Right.
remember it until afterwards. So that's what I'm talking about. That's
Well,
missing
that's not
time.
missing time. I'm just thinking that that's a missing file of not a need to know, because I was sitting there witnessing it. So I clearly remember the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't in a need to know of what was fully going on. So I stood there in that moment. I'm not missing time. Well, you could say maybe, but the remote viewing wasn't a cognitive thing. So do I consciously know of any other time of my life that I'm missing time? No, I'm very no.
Perhaps,
Well,
though, in the sort of abduction type event experiences, like when the beings
those
are over the
things.
crib where your
Okay,
conscious
yeah,
sort of
to be fair,
suspends.
yeah, if you want to say that, but I don't call it missing time. I just kind of think I'm knocked out. So it's not missing time, because to me, I feel like missing time is when you're unaware that time has passed. When I've been visited, I'm knocked out. To me, that's different. You know what I mean? To me, it's like, I know I'm knocked out. I'm not missing time. I know I'm knocked out. Where people who are missing time, they don't know that they are
But
missing the time.
what people tend to find upon getting a regression, with these gaps of missing time, is that they weren't knocked out. They were actually conscious, experiencing the thing.
Sure.
There was things that they did, said, thought, whatever. They came back to the fore. Like,
Yeah, fair enough. Like, I'm
until
giving
they
that
got the
tour.
regression, it was just a
Right.
black, box. They
Right.
had no idea,
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
anything
I'll buy that. Because missing time to me, I don't feel that way. But to be fair, yeah, I don't remember the entire tour that I gave of the house and what we all did. So that, to be fair to you, you could clearly say is missing time. What happened up on the hill, that could be another episode of missing time. Yeah, to be fair, I can explore that thought of, but for me, I call it consciousness. That I'm just knocked out. I just kind of give it that term, because for me, when I think about people who are missing time, it's like they don't realize it. I know I'm missing time. Like, I know that I'm blacked out. I know I don't know all the things. So then, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not missing it because I know I'm out. I know I'm offline.
Yeah.
I know that's happened. Where to me, if you talk about an abductee, they might like Travis Walton didn't realize, like a lot of people, they don't realize. And then something happens and then they realize it. To me, I know something's going on. And I know, blah, blah, blah. I might not be clear about what's going on, but I know that something's going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Maybe
mean? There's a difference.
there's a distinction between, those two things. I get what you're
Right.
saying. Okay.
Yeah. So I know that something's going on. I know I'm, whatever. It's not as if like, I don't know, but you could say missing, can you say that the fact that there were aliens visiting me as a child and I didn't realize it, I knew the next day, is that missing time? Because I don't know about the situation. I didn't remember it. So, it's kind of semantics. It could come under that category, but I just wasn't aware. I was aware the next day. So then for me, I'm not missing it because I'm like, oh, they visited me last night. And maybe to be fair to your statement, there could have been many more times where I was unaware and I didn't have the attributes. And that is very, very fair. Let's go forward into the next story because I have no recollection as a child of those visitations. So you could say that is missing time.
Yeah, I think most abduction researchers would classify that as missing time. Although I think it's fair to say that there's a kind of distinction to be made there. With
Right. Like
story.
I'm aware. I think people who are missing time are unaware of it.
Right.
Where I feel like I'm kind of aware, like this is going on.
Yeah, and someone just wrote in the comments there that missing time or memory gaps that needed a trigger. So you didn't remember, but something triggered it.
Right.
For you to remember.
And here's the thing, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, you could do hypnosis. Let me tell you this, people. I know enough. That's all the more I want to know, because you know what I don't want to know? I don't want to know the gruesome details. I'm like, it's kind of like, abuse. I literally don't want to know more about it. I really don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'm like, I don't think I'll ever want to know. I just need to know basis, like I was saying. And what I know is enough. And this next story that we're going to get into is a perfect example of what I know is all I want to know. And oh gosh, and after this, if we do have time, we should really talk about how I almost got swallowed by a vortex, because that's pretty huge too. That was not fun.
Well, if you ever want to bring this out, we know a person named Deb Shatsky. She is wonderful, and she would definitely be able to help you get more knowledge of what had happened.
Right. But here's the deal. Here's what's going on with me right now. All of this and coming out, and I don't want to start to get emotional. It's upsetting to say these things. This isn't easy for me. I try to be jocular. I try to put on a good front, but it's not easy, So I need to deal with all of this first. And maybe at a certain point, I'll be good enough to delve into that, but I don't know if I'm strong enough. It's a lot. Because especially when we go into this next story, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's a lot. It definitely, I can't imagine what you've been through. So no, absolutely. You gotta take this a little at a time. I completely understand. All right, Jim, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, no, maybe we should go into the experience you had with your husband.
Yes.
That was really, really interesting one.
Yeah. And like I said, because I feel like a lot of people, they get really serious about this, and I try to stay in higher vibration and not be in fear. And that's I guess my protection for me.
That's the thing. I mean, you would potentially compromise yourself frequency wise, if you've discovered something really traumatic.
Right.
That will certainly have some ramifications with your vibration and stuff that you would have to process and work through.
Right. And if I go into a lower vibration, I feel that is where those things can continue to happen to me. So I've worked very, very hard raising my vibration and staying out of that and all this kind of stuff, And that's, to be fair, also in my book, I do talk about, if there's any takeaway you have from this book, is about the powers that be, what I call the powers that be, or you can call shadow government or whatever is controlling this planet, because that's where I come from. They want all of us to be divided in a place of fear. Just turn on the news. And for me, we need to stay unified and in kindness and in love, and keep our vibrations higher. That way they can't control us, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, let me try to collect. Anyway, so here's the story, and I'll get into the story, and then I can, hopefully regroup. So my husband and I, my kids are small, and it's a Saturday or Friday night. It's probably a Saturday night. And, we live in this, suburban house, and the 3 bedrooms at the end of the hallway, right? And so the kids are little. You don't want to wake them up, but we want to have adult time, like 9, 10 o'clock at night. We want to watch TV and, blah, blah, blah. And, we can't really go out, because you'd have to get a babysitter. So we blend up some daiquiris, go downstairs, light a fire, and have, like a, little date. So, so it is colder out. I know, because there was a fire in the fireplace, and the, the embers are still in the fire. We have a pull-out couch, and all of a sudden I wake up. My first recollection is that my head is hanging over the end of this pull-out couch. So that is my first memory, coming online as I'm waking up, like, oh my God, my neck and my head, what? And I open my eyes, and, so I'm seeing the door. There's only one door into this room in the basement, and I'm seeing these entities, and they're probably, it's kind of dark. I'm sorry, I need to get closer. It's getting dark there. They're probably about that tall. And their feet, I can see their feet. They're like little flipper hands, like, E.T., underneath E.T., which was triggering for me. E.T. kind of like this, whatever. And they've got these bodies, and they're about this bigger here, this bigger, that bigger. I don't know how to describe it. So it's in proportion. About that big around, about that tall. Their hands are just like, just kind of flappy things. And they're very square, square head, literally look like a tree stump from like a oak tree or something, just a square stump. And they're kind of greenish. They have a mottled effect around their head, of like freckles, or, this mottled effect. And,
similar to characters in Star Trek.
Yes, and I do write that in my book, like Dax. And so that's how they look, and their teeth were sharp, and everything was sharp, like their eyes and everything, like, ugh. And one of them kind of pulled to the side and said, "Oh, are we scaring you?" Now, whenever I'm talking to these aliens, it's telepathically, okay? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, "Oh, and I feel like it's a she, for whatever reason. I feel like it was a female, and that she's kind of caring for me, whatever, or caring about me." And she's like, "Oh, is this better?" See, and that's a whole nother program about holograms and stuff like that, because I have a huge incidence with holograms of shape-shifting an entire room and an event with probably about 100 people witnessing this. We can get into that some other time. But anyway, so she shapeshifts. This is the first time I've seen an alien shapeshift. She shapeshifts. They all shapeshift to softer, rounder look. And they're all just slogging into this room. They're just kind of working like this, one after another. And like, where the hell are they going? What's going on here? They shift. And, I'm trying to move my head now to see what's going on. Like, where are they going? Right. And I'm kind of realizing that I'm, what do you call it when you're basically paralyzed? Paralysis. I'm like, oh crap, paralysis again. So then I'm fight against it. I'm pretty good at breaking out of it these days, or at that point, because I've done it before. And I break out and I get my head up onto the mattress, and I'm seeing my husband. I'm like, oh my God, all these times, when I need him, and he's offline when a lot of these more supernatural entities would stop by. And I'm looking at him, he's totally out, which is unusual because he's a light sleeper. And anytime, like, to this day, like if I wiggle around or move in bed or something like that, it wakes him up and, that's disturbing and blah, 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 blah. He's that person and he's out cold. And how the heck did I get my head over the edge of the bed? Like, how did I turn around and I'm laying like that? I mean, how did that
And you were already like that prior to them coming in.
They're coming in. They're already coming in, and I wake up. So it looks like there's already a trail of them. As I open up my eyes, I can see there's a line of them are walking in. So I'm assuming I'm seeing like a bunch of them, and as one would assume there's already many in the room. And where are they going? Where are they standing? What are they doing? And I'm trying to get my head up so I can see, and I can see my husband. And then and I'm getting my head onto the mattress, and oh my God, over my feet, here's this light. What I first see. So my husband's like here, and the light is over here, just a little bit, from my feet, just a little bit to the right of my feet, but it's up in the air. It's circular and it's iridescent, like a seashell, very much like a surgical lamp. Reminded me very much of my dentist lamp, because it's that iridescent thing, when they're going to examine you and all this kind of stuff, whatever. So the lamp is probably about that big. And there's a little space between my feet and where this lamp is. And the lamp looks like it's probably stationed off the mattress, of course. And out from underneath the lamp, out of the darkness, comes this figure with this head. And the limbs are very skinny, like that skinny, like the arm, like my arm is huge. I mean, you could put I don't know how many, they're just tiny, skinny. And he's beige, okay? And his hips are probably about that big around. And he's wearing
very skinny. That's
he's
skinny.
Yeah, but he's long, like 6 foot tall. And he's got a black Speedo. I've never seen an alien wearing clothing. And in that moment, I knew, see, it triggered something. I knew in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, because when I was little, as I said before, I would make, I'm in 2nd or 3rd grade, because I even remember we were just starting to read Primer's Little House on the Prairie. So it was about that time. And I'm thinking, okay, kindergarten, 1st grade, because it was in different areas of the building. So I'm probably 2nd grade, because I know where I was in the building at my elementary school. So this is about 2nd grade. And I would make these drawings of like a balloon head with a long, skinny body and the arms and legs. Instead of a stick man, they were swirly. And I would draw the stick figure, and then I would sit back and rock, and I'd laugh to myself. But I'm rocking like I'm comforting myself. And I didn't realize that I was doing that.
That's like a disassociation tactic. Rocking.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, other people know. I don't know. So I was doing that. I was like, oh my God. So anyway, so when I see this guy, I'm like, oh my God, that I know him. And he's smiling, and he's coming on top of me. Like he's crawling out from the lamp, and he's coming on top of me, and I black out.
Was there fear of this being, or a film? There's a familiarity.
Yep.
So you feel like you've seen him before.
Yep.
Also fear?
Well, yeah. But I mean, I think my fear for me, because I've encountered these guys, all my life and stuff like that, there's fear. But at this point, this fear was a little bit different, because now I'm adult. I'm more discerning. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I have so many stories of entities and stuff like that. And literally for me, putting a sheet over my head is like me hiding. I'm like they can't see me. Oh my God. I feel so stupid, but I'm such a baby. I'm like, oh my God, I'm hiding. Anyway, so I'm in fear, but as fast as I'm seeing him, recognizing him, oh my God, what are you doing here? Okay, I black out. I'm gone. So I don't know if he's blacking me out. I think it's just self-defense. Who knows what? I don't really care. At that moment, I'm blacking out. See, and that's an episode like hypnosis, but I don't want to go here. So anyway, I black out. I wake up the next morning. Here's the deal. My husband and I always, I didn't really have pajamas. I still don't really have pajamas. I'm like, I don't have enough drawer space for pajamas. So I always just wore T-shirt. I was still wearing a bra, underwear, shorts. And at that time I was wearing socks because this was before menopause. I can't wear socks now because it's too hot. But back then I was cold. Anyway, so I wake up and my head's next to my husband and I'm naked. And I never go to sleep naked. And, after my husband and I would be intimate, to be fair, during these times. But then afterwards, we would clean up and we would put our clothes back on, because if there was a fire or the children needed us or they came downstairs, I am not going to be naked. I'm too modest and I'm not doing that in front of my children. And I have 2 boys. Their mother should not be naked. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's my rule. Anyway, I look, I'm naked and I look on the floor and there's my clothes. So the socks are there, the shorts are there, the underwear is in the shorts, the t-shirts on top of the shorts and the bras in the t-shirt. And I'm like, and I knew in that moment, I know this much about, aliens and abductions, that I've heard stories where people have been abducted and then their clothes, it's as if their body had melted away and their clothes just fall, kind of like the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz, right? She's like, oh, I'm melting. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, so that's what my clothes look like, as a puddle on the floor. And I'm like, oh, damn, that did happen. I mean, when the contact was happening, I knew what's happening. I know what's going on. I can feel the vibration in the room. So I know that they're setting up another vibrational thing. They're here. Oh, let me tell you this. I forgot this. As they're coming into the room and I'm talking to her and she's like, oh, are you afraid? And I'm like, yeah. And then she goes, here's the important part. We're here to save your planet. We're here to save your planet, which says to me, they're off world. And I had some French words for her that I'm not going to say here, but they were French and it started with an F, like in French. Anyway, and that's when I turned and, because I'm trying to get away from these people. I don't know who else is in the room. I don't know about this other guy. It's just these little tree plugs that look like Sigmund the Sea Monster. If you've ever seen that show, that was a Seals Croft. I can't remember. Is that what Saturday morning TV kind of, it wasn't a cartoon. It was kind of like, what do you want to call it? Like live action, blah, blah, blah. Sigmund the Sea Monster looked like that. I mean, kind of looked like that, but small. So I'm just thinking I'm dealing with them. But I thought it was very important that she said, we're here to save your planet. Okay, fast forward. So what it says to me is that for all these years, I thought, oh, they came and took my eggs. Yeah. But it wasn't until I'm, writing the book. And I was talking to a girlfriend about the situation, and she was kind of triggered by that. She'd been sexually abused and everything like that. That all of a sudden I realized in our conversation, they had my husband's sperm, because that was the events of the evening. So not only were my eggs available, so was that. So now you have the perfect, combination to create a human, create a hybrid, a clone. I don't know, whatever you want to say, but they have it all. They have the family jewels. And I have teased my one son. I'm like, hey, if somebody ever comes up to you and says, I'm your brother or sister, I'm like, you better believe it, and he does. I mean, because, and I'm sure they're off world. I don't know where they are. I don't have any memory. So you could say that is missing time and space or whatever. I don't have any recollection of ever, because, there's this TV show now. I really love this show though. It's called Resident Alien. And in one of the latest episodes, they show this woman being abducted, and they got the Greys on that show too. I mean, that show's a kicker, a lot of disclosure. But anyway, she was taken up and then she was in the nursery and they had her baby there and everything. But I don't think there was just, for me, there's not just one baby. I mean, they got all my eggs because what do I need them for? I'm sure it was a symbol to them like, oh, well, she had a tubal ligation. She doesn't care about her eggs anymore. We're free to take them. But, there's a part of me that, feels, why couldn't you just ask, whatever, or talk to me about it, because I'm like, anyway, it's yeah. I don't know what to say about that.
So
So there's that.
the tree stump beings, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Pascagoula, Mississippi abduction case.
Mm-mm.
In the 70s, Calvin Parker,
Mm.
I can't remember the other guy's name. So the two beings that approached them and took them into a craft sound very similar to the tree stump beings that you're describing.
Oh, I'm gonna have
No
to look that up.
Look
Do they
this
have
up.
pictures? Do they have pictures?
I
I mean, did
think
they draw any?
somebody has drawn pictures. I feel like I've seen pictures, like drawings
Mm.
of them. So no neck. They have no neck. They're stocky, short, stocky.
Mm.
And they have flippers like arms. They have
Yeah.
not normal arms, except one of them remembers them as being kind of like pincers, almost like, but not like normal arms appendages,
Yeah.
with elbows and stuff. They were kind of like flippers and
Right.
pincers at the same time somehow.
I'd agree with that, but and recently I saw this Whitley Strieber thing, and he had short, stumpy guys, and with a tall being as well. I saw that on Ancient Aliens or something like that. I'm like, oh crap, Whitley Strieber. I'm sorry if I'm swearing. I saw these people too. But here's the thing, because they shape shifted. So Whitley saw them as rounder, or like in his depiction, and these people probably saw their depiction. Here's one other note of what happened to me. I'm trying to get all the information is the next morning, like I had modeling on my face too. Then I had these brown spots on my face. Oh no, they weren't like that. They didn't have legs or anything. No. These literally look like a tree stump or a can. No, they didn't have legs at all. No, you know how E.T. Had that squat, but literally like a tree stump. No, not at all like that.
Not like that.
No, I've seen that being, like I've seen a depiction of that. No, these literally, I mean, literally are, a cylinder. They're literally a cylinder. They literally look like you were out chopping wood.
Or something.
Kind of. Only, they were only about this big around and this tall. I mean, they were not much taller than, they had to be about, I'd say 16 to 18 inches tall. The circumference, kind of.
So that's very, very short. That's much
very
shorter.
short. Yeah. Yeah, they're short. They're, like from my knee height, about your knees. That's about how tall they were.
Oh wow, that's very, very small.
They were
So
very
what
small.
function could they have served, being that small? And
I
you
have no
didn't see
idea.
them do anything. They
Nope.
just came in and lined up, or what did
I
they?
feel like they were witnessing. I feel like they were watching it or doing something with it.
Yeah, because it seems like the stick being was going to do whatever to you, the procedure
Right.
or whatever. So what were they there for?
I don't know, unless here's the thought that's coming to me right now. So we have many of these beings. We have him taking the eggs and the sperm. Were they able to actually make babies in this moment in each one of them? But here's the thing. I'm going to call baloney on that one, because they didn't really have arms to take a baby. So I literally I feel as if they were watching or witnessing for some reason. I can't tell you. I don't feel that they could have played a participatory role of being participants. I think they were just watching. I don't know. But their arms weren't something that they could do anything with. And their feet were just like, kind of getting in the room, like boom, boom, that kind of a thing. So I don't know what their part was, but as I said, I just saw that Whitley Strieber thing on Ancient Aliens or whatever. And I'm like, oh dang, he saw that crew too. And that is the thing, like that last year that I said in my book, I'm like, okay, Spirit, show me what you want. And here's the thing. I think I've witnessed some things and it doesn't really click. And here's the example. I gave Spirit this year and I'm watching Close Encounters. I've seen that movie a million times, right? I love that movie. But here it is at the end, and the bay doors on the ship open up, and we haven't even gotten into, I've been on spacecraft. I witness a lot of overhead things that are going on. That's a whole nother thing, because they break open the sky. Our sky, actually kind of like the firmament, breaks open and it opens up with sound. It's like, oh, and the sky opens up. And anyway, So, where was I going with that? The sky opens up. We're oh my gosh. Now I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
She was talking about a vortex.
Well, there was the vortex thing too. I don't know. I digress. But I don't know. There's just so much. I don't know. The guys. Oh, well, anyway, I had the brown stuff on my face. And you would think that that's a mask. Sometimes you get that as a pregnancy mask. And I literally, when I had my boys, I didn't even know this was possible. I got that brown line on my stomach. I'm like, this is, what? My husband's like, is that going to go away? I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, so after when I woke up, I had this brown stuff on my face, this modeling like Dax.
And you said it was, you said it was similar to the tree stump beings.
Yes. And like Dax Jazadic. Like on Star Trek, I think it's not Next Generation. I think it's with Cisco, I think was the thing. And
Deep
what
Space
was it?
Nine,
Deep Space. I think she was on that one. I looked just like her. And it went down my neck. And I literally had to go and get, an ablation, like where they, they do a diamond dust kind of a thing to get it off my face, because scrubbing, bleaching, it was there for the longest time. It was kind of like, anyway, so I had that scrubbed off. It never came back, but it was like, you could say it's hormonal, but this just happened in one night. It was like a shock thing, like all of a sudden I wake up and I got this brown stuff on my face. It was like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's like, what did they do?
But I looked like them then. I looked like them then. Yeah. Oh, so they morphed, and that's that hologram thing. So it's like Whitley saw one thing. This man probably saw something else. I saw something, and shape-shifting. So I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to tell you, I went to this event one time and there was this guy and he went around the room. He's asking everybody to look into his left eye, and all the participants are doing, and there's about 100 people in the room, and he gets to me and I'm at the back of the room. Of course, I'm with my best friend. We're still best friends. So she saw this. Here's another witness. And I'm going to tell you, people in the Twin Cities, there's somebody who was at that event. He also advertised on the Edge magazine and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so somebody was there. And this host started to shapeshift, but at first it was like a hologram over him, an overlay, and you could still see him. And he would shapeshift to each one of the participants. But when it came to me, he literally turned into these different people. So he was just kind of like a 6-foot Caucasian man, about 40 years old. But when he looked at me, he would literally turn into a little old lady, or, he shapeshifted into like a Civil War guy with a gun and everything like that. And he had the whole costume, the whole uniform. And then it got worse because all of a sudden we were in a conference room in the basement of a hotel in Bloomington. And all of a sudden the hotel room was gone, or the event room was gone, the entire event room. And it would change into whatever was the background to whatever hologram was coming. So if it was a little old lady, it would be, now we're in her kitchen, all of us. It was her kitchen, or we were on a mountain, or we were in a field. But why I'm bringing this up is this shape-shifting stuff. This is, I believe, how aliens, this whole interaction with the alien off-world species is shape-shifting, telepathy, frequency. These is the mistura of all these kinds of things. So I think because of my interaction with these beings, when this man got to me, this all exploded and came out. Now, the gentleman during this event, he was upset, and we talked about it. He was upset that it happened, but Spirit told him to allow it. See, and this plays in again to, I feel like I'm here, I have these stories, they are witnessed, and I'm presenting them to other people. I don't really fully understand it. I'm starting to understand more and more as I'm bringing it out. But this all happened. I mean, but it was literally like being on a holodeck on Star Trek, where they're running around and stuff like that. That's exactly what happened to this room. It was like a holodeck suddenly. So all, gosh, I mean, and that also speaks to me of like how they actually move through the universe, how they actually, it's kind of like Dune. Like if you actually read the books and saw the original movies, how they folding time and space. and everything
Mm-hmm.
through frequency. That is how actual space travel happens.
That's how it has to happen. I mean, it must be something like that, because the distance is just too vast.
Exactly.
Whatever speeds, yeah.
Right. And so when I saw the ships that are happening, and that's, our government knows about it. It's another there's a very similar close planet close to ours, but, and I don't believe in the firmament, but I have to tell you, I believe in the firmament, because I realized that I wrote about the firmament about 4 times in my book, and I didn't even get it. But literally when the spacecraft would come, I'd be standing outside in my nightgown, and I would hear this vibrational, the wah, which is the same sound I was also shown and told as the didgeridoo and Tibetan monk throat singing. What are they? I thought they were doing meditations. No, they're literally trying to open up the sky so the sky people can come back and forth, like the longhorns, like the Vikings would do, all that kind of stuff, because they knew they could rip open the sky, the firmament, and these other ships can come through. And our government fully knows about that. Oh, and they got the dirigibles now. Are you seeing that on Facebook? I put that in my book too. These dirigibles, that's a whole cover story.
No, I didn't hear about what's the deal.
Oh, you will. This is about the same time as, because I pick up on these stories. I'm always shown these stories, and they're on the news during the same time as the China balloon incident. They came out with another story of, we're going to put dirigibles up in the sky, and this is going to help with like satellite and cable programming, for TV. So don't worry about it. You're going to see a dirigible up in the sky. No problem. We already know about it. Baloney. Those dirigibles aren't from here. Now, there's this whole thing on Facebook that I just saw today of this big dirigible. I don't know where it's being built or something like that, but this is just an off-world program. So don't be fooled by it. It's a cover story. So y'all know that. So now y'all can see it, and we're busting that program too. So they're going to have to come up with something else. And I actually kind of think, though, it's tourism. I think it's tourism from the other side. Come and see the people on the planet Earth.
Sometimes I wonder that there has been other testimonies of contactees that suggest the fact that, I mean, there's just a lot of different races coming here. And I think that there's definitely great interest in our planet. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that some of them come here to, who knows, for entertainment purposes. It's possible.
Well, this other planet is very similar to Earth, and these people are like, they're the clone of Earth, like we're attached, spooky entanglement and travel. Like they are similar to us, but they're just on the other side of the firmament in a different. Well, the firmament's different than that. There's a portal that they're coming through and everything, and so but I just kind of feel like a lot of it is like, how Musk, like how we're trying to have like this tourism in space. Mm-hmm. That's what they're doing too. I mean, some of them I'm sure are working units, for the military and other governments and other species and stuff like that. But I do feel like these are more humanoids, but they're coming here and checking us out, and then they go up. But we have been told in the news that you're going to see dirigibles in the sky. Ignore them. It's normal. Right. It's baloney.
Wow. Dana, your story is incredible. And
I got more.
And I was just going to say, I'd definitely like to have you back on talking about holograms and portals and vortexes, the Galactic Council, shape-shifting, and so much more. I mean, this was a great interview. I
thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed talking to you and hearing your experience.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that I get a little emotional. And this is why, it's been hard for me to make YouTubes and come out. Like, I hate on myself, and I'm like, oh my God, and why am I telling you all this? But I just feel I'm older, and I'm like, we're all supposed to be on our path of our life while we're here. And I can't leave this planet. I can't die and I didn't say these things.
Mhm.
I think that would be, if you want to say something is evil or a sin, this would be my sin, is to not share this. I mean, I would go up to heaven and they'd be like, oh, and I've been up to heaven. That's a whole nother thing. We haven't even talked about ghosts. We haven't talked about shadow people. I mean, there is so much more. Anyway, but it would be a sin for me, wrong of me, to leave this planet and for you all not to have these puzzle pieces for you to put together. We all need to put these puzzle pieces together. And I'm just adding my puzzle piece. So thank you for this opportunity, truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart. And I do get emotional. I mean, because it's hard.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I mean, that's authenticity. I mean, no, yeah, we should never hold back. I mean, if it happens, it happens. I mean, I don't think there's any, there shouldn't be any issues with that at all. It's just completely natural and it's authentic, and it would be artificial if we, pretended otherwise. So, yeah.
Well, I don't like to be judged. You know what I mean? Like for that. I mean, like you say, it's hard for this to come out of your mouth because then people think you're a loony bin. And I'm like, I'm a stand-up person. I'm a normal person. And I know I'm not psychotic. I've asked, I've searched, am I normal? And I'm normal. I'm not on drugs. I don't need drugs to go to sleep or, any of these kind, you know what I mean? I've never been on I'm a normal person. I wish I was psychotic because then I could say, oh, I'm psychotic. And then it'd be like, check, like that's easy.
Yeah, don't worry about what other people think, because
I know.
there are millions like you that have these incredible stories of aliens and UFOs and being contacted, and they're incredible. And I'm very glad that you shared your story with us. And I definitely would love to have you come back on and talk more in depth.
See, yeah, everybody's saying it now, but back my whole growing up, we didn't have the internet and all this kind of stuff. Nobody was talking about it. So I feel very blessed that in my lifetime, I'm able to talk about it and have this opportunity. And I thank you very deeply for allowing me to be on your show and hosting me. I super appreciate it. Thank you. And hopefully I'll get better and better and less tearful as time goes on. Right?
You're perfect just how it is, because like Jim was saying, it's the authenticity of it. You are telling, this is coming from your heart and soul, and you're telling us. So, and you're not just telling Jim and myself, you're telling the world.
Yeah.
So yes. Jim, anything you'd like to follow up with real quick?
No, I think we'll just save it for part 2 whenever we do part 2.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, awesome.
Danny, you was awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody that was out there listening and participating, thank you so much. It's because of you that we're doing this, and we get to have great people like Dana on to share their stories.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. And you can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.
Oh, you're back. I didn't know.
Yeah, and it's